All right, welcome for our final installment of our little dating masterclass. I just wanted to, before we dive in, thank you for joining me this week. It's been a lot of fun talking about all of this stuff, and I hope it was helpful for you guys in some way or another. And today we're just going to be talking about kind of healing in the context of relationships. And we have this one slide, but a lot of notes in my little notes folder on my phone. But these are kind of the things we're going to go over. We're going to go over kind of triggers. We're going to go over how to work through those. We're also going to talk about self sabotage. We're going to talk about consciously navigating conflict, boundaries, desires, and nurturing intimacy and connection. And the kind of point of today's chat is going to be a little bit more along the lines of like what's going to come up when you are, let's say, seeing somebody, not we talked kind of before about like when you're looking to find somebody, when you're kind of just touching base with people, kind of seeing who sticks, who doesn't. And this is really applicable for today, when it comes to like you're seeing someone on a regular basis or you're in a more serious relationship or situation. So, kind of the next step, right? So, when we're talking about healing in relationships, there's a couple of things I want to talk about with this. And, the first thing I said here is we can't heal in a bubble, we can't heal alone. And that actually relationships offer a really beautiful, and even just dating offers like really beautiful opportunities to go even deeper with our own work on ourselves. We are biologically relational creatures. We're tribal creatures. We're mammals first and foremost, and we are meant to be with others. We're meant to be in community. We're meant to be in partnership, and that is something that we're hardwired to do. And in fact, if you look at our nervous system, we have something called co-regulation, which is essentially that we're like wired in our bodies to co-regulate with other people's nervous systems, with other people's energies. So we are deeply affected and connected to the people around us. And these could be just people that are honestly complete strangers. If you're in a concert situation, or like if you've ever seen musical theater, you might notice that everybody kind of feels the same feelings, everybody's like kind of into it, everybody's like sharing a shared experience. And there have been really interesting studies done that, like, when you're in these big crowds and you're kind of all there for a specific reason, our heartbeats actually like syncopate. They actually become like we start to beat at the same time. So we really are literally hardwired to connect with others on a really deep level. So I have a lot of people who I work with and also who I've talked to through social media who have really thought that, in order to date, in order to have a healthy, happy relationship, I have to first heal myself and heal alone completely before I can enter into this space and heal with other people or be in a healthy relationship. And that's just simply not true. I want you to think of the healing process or the self awakening, self like actualization process as kind of a two-part thing. So the first part is really, yes, you need time to be in a cocoon, in a bubble, to learn about yourself, to really work on everything that you can on your own and get yourself into like the best spot possible. Um, you know, just by doing the work by yourself. But that only takes you like halfway. And the other half of it is like you have to go out into the world now and learn how to be with other people. You have to learn how to heal with other people. And we are relational creatures. So the second step of the kind of full healing process has to happen when you are with other people. And this could be friendships, this could be in community, this could be family, and it could be romantic relationships, right? All of those provide us an opportunity to heal in the context of relationships in general. So you cannot just heal alone in a bubble. You have to at some point get out in the world and interact with people, unless you are a complete hermit and you live on a desert island and you're never going to see anybody again. It's you have to learn how to do that. You do not have to wait until you are in some kind of fully healed place, though, to go out and do this. And, you want to obviously have self awareness. You want to understand your triggers, your trauma, your wounds, your patterns, your belief systems, the way that you work. You want to understand that for sure because it'll help you have a better chance of being in a healthier situation and finding a person who's much more aligned for your happiness. But it doesn't mean that you have to reach this kind of unattainable, perfect place of being totally healed before you go out and start dating or meet somebody. And in fact, when you are out there dating, meeting people, and actually engaging in some kind of more serious relationship, all of those are going to actually provide new and different kinds of opportunities to heal because it really holds up a mirror to what is still present for you and what is still active for you in terms of your wounding and the things that you've been working on. So, dating and committed relationships just allow us to go deeper into our healing in a way that we can't in our own on a bubble. And we get to practice doing things differently when we're with people. We get to put these things that we've tried to heal and we've been working on into actual practice when we are with other people. And we get to show ourselves it's safe to operate in a different way. We get to reprogram ourselves actively. We get to have different kinds of experiences and get used to new ways of being. So I don't want you to wait for a magic moment, some kind of like magic aha moment when you feel like, oh, I finally healed it all and now I'm ready to go be in a healthy relationship, to go out there and start engaging in relationships and dating. Go start with where you are. You just have to have some level, I think, of self-awareness and have taken some steps on this journey so that you feel empowered to do this in a safe way. But don't wait until there's some perfect moment because there won't be. When we are dating people or we are, in relationships, we will have triggers. And I want to be like really as clear as possible about this section because I think it's really important because triggers can bring a lot of shame. It can really get in the way of our experience of finding happiness and finding love. It can cause self-sabotage in these moments where we do find healthy, potentially great partners and then we get in our own way. And so if you have any questions about any of this, of course, like please drop it in the chat, or if any of this resonates, do let me know because it's really, really important that we talk about this whole thing. So, what are triggers? We hear this word a lot on social media. I feel like it's like a pop culture, pop psychology kind of thing, and we think everything is a trigger, right? And actually, it's not. So, triggers are essentially like very intense emotional responses to stimuli that make us react based on the feelings and thoughts that come up as a result. So, I'll say that again. So, triggers are intense emotional responses to stimuli, so intense emotional responses to things that we experience in real time that make us have reactions that are solely based on the feelings and the thoughts that pop into our body and our mind in that moment. So, for example, I had a partner who was on his phone, very sneaky all the time, DMing women on Instagram, trying to engage in flirtatious conversations, and definitely crossing the line when it came to the way that he interacted with other people behind my back. So with that, there was a lot of emotional cheating, and honestly would have been physical cheating had any of these women actually like like given into it, but he didn't have that much game, which is really embarrassing for him. But what ended up happening was, like, in my new partnership with this healthy person, I found myself really having intense feelings of anxiety around anytime he would get a text message or anytime he would be looking at his DMs on social media, because there was so much pain and so much trauma from my ex that was around the way that he really betrayed me, and betrayal trauma and trust. Yeah, like no trust, in that situation. That with this new partner, I found my anxiety just like, oh, just wanting to like burst like a volcano. Every time I would see his phone vibrate or light up, my eyes would immediately go to the phone and go, oh, who's that? Who's he talking to? I wonder what they're talking about. Is he talking to a girl? Like, what are they saying? And it was like a very, very intense trigger that would come up for me, a lot of anxiety. So the intense emotional response, anxiety and fear, the stimuli was the text messages every time he'd get a text or be looking at DMs. And then the third part is the reaction. So, how did I respond in those moments where I was triggered? Well, because I've been on this path for quite some time, I have these tools that I use in those moments to keep myself from just blurting out whatever I want to blurt out, or taking an action, or having a reaction that's driven by the trigger. So I've been able to be really good about that. And I'm going to teach you what that step-by-step process is today, because it's so fucking helpful. And not just even in the context of relationships and dating, but also with friendships, with family, with work, with anything in your life that you're dealing with other people. These are essential skills to have, to help you manage your emotionality. Because when these triggers, when these intense feelings come up, what ends up happening is, like, in a split second, we are reacting, and then we're not responding from a conscious place. We're reacting from a place of wounding and a place of fear and a place of anger, or whatever that might be. And when we respond from a place like that, we lose all of our personal power because we are completely at the mercy of our mind and the thoughts that are coming up, which generally are not very conscious. They're driven by the trigger, and we're driven completely by the emotional response. And so we have outbursts, or we could, like, totally withdraw, or we can, take somebody's phone and throw it against the wall and smash it. Like, we can do all these things that are not things that are going to make us feel empowered or good about ourselves. So those are essentially what triggers are. Like I said, it's based on stuff that hasn't totally healed, or it's old wounding, old trauma. And it could also, and I'll talk about this in a second, but it could also be a reflection of what's happening in the here and now. And being able to discern between the two is a very important skill to have. If you've experienced in your life, in relationships with either, like, your primary caregivers growing up, or with relationships that you've had in the past, really good, like, connected friendships, or really intense romantic relationships, if you've experienced things like abandonment, betrayal, rejection, neglect, abuse of any kind, feeling chronically, like, unheard and unseen and not cared for, chances are those wounds are going to show up in your relationships moving forward, because that's your brain and your body's way of keeping you safe. It goes, hey, we can't forget about this. Someone hurt you like this in the past. And so just expect that other people are going to continue to hurt you, and that it's always going to be this way, because then you can protect yourself, rather than giving yourself an opportunity to experience something new, something wonderful, maybe hope, right? That this person that you're in a relationship with isn't going to be like that. Excuse me. So be aware of those wounds, right? I had, like, shin ramen before I came here, and let me tell you, that spice is, I don't know what's going on with my throat. Excuse me. Okay, so we need to be able to discern what is a trigger and what belongs to me in these moments, and what is coming from the here and now. And sometimes a trigger belongs all the way in the past, has nothing to do with what's actually going on in front of you. Sometimes something in front of you is actually fucked up and not cool and not good, and you are responding in a healthy way to what's happening right in front of you. And sometimes it's a little bit of both, where there's something happening right in front of you and it's really not okay, and that's part of it. And also, triggers from the past are being activated. So there are these three ways that triggers can show up for us, and we have to be able to engage in a practice to know what belongs to ourselves, what belongs, what's from the past, what is actually our own baggage that we need to work on and not project into the present moment, and what is actually happening right now that needs to be addressed through communication, through boundaries, through whatever it is that you need to do, conflict resolution, in order for you to regain that sense of safety and well-being. Okay. So a couple of things to think about when you know what your wounds and traumas are. you can look at any given situation where you're triggered and really ask yourself, is this happening right now or is this something from the past? So using the example that I kind of had before, right? It's like, okay, when I see my partner's phone light up and I get that surge of anxiety, my chest tightens, my heart starts to race, I get hot. I start to feel really like I want to run somewhere, like run away, or grab the phone and look myself and like reassure myself, right? I recognize that, like, okay, that is something that happened in the past. That's something that was really painful for me because my ex-partner gave me betrayal trauma, and I always trusted him and never looked at his phone and never like did anything until I did and found out all the things he was doing behind my back, and that was so painful that now my automatic response is to believe that that's what's happening right now. And the way that I've navigated this particular trigger and wound is to like take responsibility for that part that needs healing on my own, because I need to be able to trust my partner now, right? And also like recognizing that what's real and what's not. Has this new person given me any reason not to trust them? And the answer is no. We look at the facts, right? And the facts of the here and now are like, well, this person has done nothing but show me that they can be trusted. And I'll talk a little bit too, and just a bit about involving your partner in these moments and asking them to show up for you in ways that are also going to be supportive. So for me, that's communicating to my partner that this is what happened to me. This is my trigger. This is where it comes from. I'm working on it as much as I can by not reacting in those moments. And like, my partner would ask, like, well, what can I do to, help? How can I support you? Do you want to like see my phone? Like, do you want to know who I'm talking to? And I was like, well, it's not on you, but like, of course, it would make me feel better to like, see what's going on. And so whenever this happens, I know that I can always ask like, "Oh, who are you talking to?" And like immediately without any kind of feeling of like, "Oh, I don't want to share this," or like, "Oh, she's being crazy." It's very safe for me to ask that question because he always is like, "Oh, this is who I'm talking to. Oh, this is what we're talking about." And he kind of shows me, and my anxiety goes away completely. And the more that we did that, the less I care about who he's talking to, the less that I'm triggered, the trigger goes away. So this is why like it's so important when you're in relationships, and especially in a healthy relationship, that you allow yourself to go through this process of healing in the context of that relationship, because with the support of that other person, you can really work through some of the old wounds and traumas that on your own, like you probably couldn't always work through 100% by yourself. Okay. So this is just like one of the examples that I can kind of pull up because it's so relevant to like my own story. But I want you to think about your own story and like what comes up for you around feeling anxious or feeling fearful or feeling angry or having emotions come up for you with partners and when dating is happening. Um, and discerning what belongs to you and what's actually happening in the here and now. If, let's say, somebody is actively doing something in the here and now that is not okay, like I mentioned, right? So let's say you're with somebody and they are just really ignoring you, like they're turning away, they're not conversing with you, they're not giving you warmth, they're not doing anything to kind of show that they're interested, and you start to feel rejection, like that rejection wound, you know that's valid, right? Like in the here and now, your partner's really making you feel unwanted. And that's something that you can acknowledge is actually real and actually valid based on the truth of what's happening in the moment. And also, you can ask yourself, like, is this something that's happened to me before? Am I also feeling this because it's something from the past? And can I do anything now about it to engage in a kind of repair or conscious communication to ask my partner for what I need so that this isn't happening? Okay. So knowing what belongs to you, what's in the here and now, and what's a little bit of both, that's going to help you work through some of these triggers. Now, when you are triggered, when you are feeling an intense emotional response and you don't want to react from that place, but you want to rather respond from a more conscious place so that you can actively make choices and decisions that are in alignment with who you believe yourself to be, your highest self, your healthiest self. these are the steps that I want you to take. Okay. So take some notes, or, you'll get the replay so you can always listen to that. But this is so fucking important, you guys. And like I said, this applies to any relationship you are ever going to be in with any person. Um, these are the steps that you want to take when you're feeling these triggers. So let's say you feel, let's say something is going on and you are with somebody. Let's say for this, purposes of this dating masterclass, you're with your partner, you're with the person that you're dating. I would say, let's give a specific example. So let's say you've texted them and you're asking them like, hey, like, what's going on? How are you? Been thinking about you. You've reached out because you want to connect with them. Okay. And let's say that like they just don't respond. Like they're not responding, they're ghosting, they're kind of being a little bit like they haven't like touched base back with you. It's been a few hours, and you're starting to feel kind of an intense anxiety come around, right? You're like wondering, okay, are they ghosting me? Do they not like me? Are they doing something they shouldn't be doing and they're hiding from me? Like all of these thoughts start to come up, and then you feel it in your body and you feel this anxiety, or you feel this fear, or you feel anger. Fuck them. They're like, they don't care enough about me. They're blowing me off. Like, how dare they disrespect me? You start to feel that trigger coming up, right? So, using this example, I want the first biggest practice that you're going to learn how to do is learning how to become your own best observer. And this is something that meditation really helps with. This is like one of the major things that I've taken away from, especially Vipassana meditation, mindfulness meditation. It's being able to take yourself outside of your emotions and your thoughts, see your emotions and your thoughts as two completely separate entities outside of yourself, and separate yourself in a way that you can compassionately observe what's happening inside your body and what's happening inside your mind. So you can start to question it. So you can start to get a little distance from it, right? And not be sucked in. And I used this example the other day. Your emotions and your feelings live in your body. Okay, so you're going to experience first your emotions and feelings as sensations. When you think about the last time you felt anger, I want you to notice how your body responded. How does it feel in your body when you're angry? For me, it's like I feel a tightness in my throat. I clench my hands. All my muscles get very tense. I get hot. My heart is racing. These are the things that I know, like, I feel like this urge to punch or to do something, right? These are all indications. These are sensations that my body and, that come from the nervous system, that my body is experiencing, that are that kind of describe this is anger. The secondary thing that happens when you experience an emotion are the thoughts start to come, because the way the brain works is it's a meaning making machine. It is there to make meaning, create meaning, to understand things around you, whatever's happening at any given moment, to keep you safe, to keep you in survival. So when you are experiencing a trigger, when you're experiencing an emotion arise, right? So for this example, of not getting texted back or not feeling that communication coming back, you start to feel that anxiety in your body, and you can witness that. And you notice that starting to pop up because you start to notice that anxiety in your body, and you start to notice the thoughts and how they're starting to tell you a story about something that's happening that's not good, because your brain is trying to make meaning from the body sensations. When you can start to observe all of that happening without attaching to it and letting it take you for a ride, that's where a lot of your power lies. And you can go, oh, that's interesting. Like, I notice my body is feeling this way, and it's kind of tingling and tight here. And I know that that means that that's anxiety. And interesting, I'm having these thoughts that are popping into my mind that are telling me that this person is doing something bad, that they're out there to hurt me, that they're abandoning me. It's not to say that there isn't maybe some element of that going on, because every situation is different. But I want you to kind of take on the idea that nothing is wrong unless you are absolutely positive that it is, unless you know otherwise, right? The stories in our head tend to catastrophize. We have a negativity bias, which means that our brain will always go towards the negative answer. We'll always kind of look for the bad, the wrong, the potentially threatening things first. So know that you always will lean towards panic. You'll lean towards like, what is the worst case scenario? And just remember that that is not true unless it's proven. So let's try to think about best case scenario or like other things that might be happening. So when you're triggered and you feel this, the first thing is to observe it in your body, notice it with compassion, let it exist, give it space, and then notice the thoughts and the quality of the thoughts and kind of observe them like they're cars on a highway driving by and you're just watching them. Or it's like words on a billboard and you're just watching them. You're just noticing, observing, you're allowing them to exist, but you're not letting them take you away. The second thing that you're going to do when this starts to happen, okay, after you've noticed that the trigger is coming up, that the emotion is happening, you're going to do something that I like to call practicing a pause. So practice the pause. You notice and you observe and you tend to yourself first. So let's say you are ready to send a million text messages and go, where are you? What are you doing? I bet you're cheating on me, or I bet you're doing this, or like, well, fuck you. I don't want to talk to you. And like, you have this reaction that you want to have. Before you take any action, pause. Okay. And tend to your nervous system, which will help you also with the thoughts that you're having and with the reaction response. So, what I mean by that, if you are in an active situation where you're having a conversation, or maybe there's an argument with your partner, or something is happening in real time, I want you to get distance. Get distance, get physical space away from the moment. So if you're with somebody, go to the bathroom, take 5, go for a walk around the block. Say, you know what, we have to pause this conversation because I'm in a very like emotional triggered place. I don't want to say something I'm going to regret or do something I'm going to regret. So I'm going to take 5. I need some space. Do that. If you're not physically around the person, let's say like in this, situation where you're texting, I want you to put the phone in another room and take physical distance from the phone or whatever, communication device that you're using. Go into your bedroom, go into a nice space, go outside, get some fresh air, but pause before you do anything and then tend to the trigger, tend to your body and tend to your mind. So after you've paused and given yourself some distance, you're going to invite in some self-compassion because you're allowed to have these triggers. You're allowed to have these feelings. We are all human beings. You are not wrong. Don't bring shame into the game or judgment or anything like that or criticism. It is what it is and it is okay. Like it is what it is and it is okay. Okay. So bring in that self-compassion and then regulate yourself so that you can get your brain back online, because when we're triggered, literally blood flow is drastically reduced from our prefrontal cortex, our neocortex here, which helps us make conscious, grounded decisions. Blood flow is redirected away from that area. So we're literally on autopilot and we can't make good decisions and we can't think from a conscious place when we're triggered. So you need to regulate your nervous system to bring your brain literally back online to help you navigate this moment in a conscious way. Okay. So you have that self-compassion, then you're going to address your nervous system. And this is where you come in with somatics. So whether you need to shake your whole body, jump up and down, scream, yell, whatever, punch a pillow, go for a walk, move your body, whatever you need to do, breath work, do a little like go for a jog, like anything that you need to do to kind of help yourself regulate down out of that fight or flight response, do it. You need to do that first before you make any decisions, because otherwise, like I said, you're going to make decisions from that triggered reactive place. So address the body first, get out of your fight or flight, and use those somatic tools. Then you'll see that once you start to come out of that triggered emotional place, the thoughts will slow down and they'll stop being so negative. They'll stop being so catastrophizing. You won't have that desire to react the strong kind of way that you did before. You'll be able to kind of go, okay, this is hard. This is difficult. This feels uncomfortable, but I'm okay. Now, what do I want to do? What are the steps that I want to take? When you look at your thoughts, can you reframe them? Right? So using the same example, this person isn't texting you back. I want you to look at the facts of what's going on here, right? You message them, it's been a few hours. Could they potentially be busy at work? Could they be dealing with a personal thing that's going on with family or kind of a personal crisis? Or do they maybe just not have the bandwidth to engage in a conversation about something right now? Do they just not like have that? You there, we've all had those days where we've had a bad day at work, or just like stressed out, or there's stuff going on that has nothing to do with the relationship that we're in. And then the person texts you and you want to be present, you want to connect with them, and you're just like, you need a break. Like, you need a break from everything, and you just need to take 5 and take a nice hot shower and just like be by yourself for a little bit. Like, sometimes that happens, right? Like, more often than not. And so I want you to give yourself alternative explanations that could be just as reasonable and justifiable as the explanations that are catastrophized, right? So on the one hand, you have the triggered thoughts, which are like, this person doesn't like me, they're ghosting me, they're ignoring me, they're doing something wrong. And you need to work to also reframe those thoughts. Oh, maybe they're really stressed and they're having a hard day and they just need some time to themselves. They'll respond when they're ready. Or maybe like their phone died, or maybe like, I don't know, whatever else, things that could possibly happen. There's like a million reasons why someone may or may not get back to you. They may not have read your message. Maybe they've been really busy. Like, who knows, right? So give yourself reframes on those thoughts and on what's actually happening, reframing thoughts that actually are more supportive for your well-being, thoughts that aren't going to trigger you or feel awful. Okay. So that's the next step. And then you can ask yourself, what action do I want to take now that I have more of a distance from this emotional trigger, now that things have calmed down? How do I want to proceed in a conscious way? What are the conscious choices that I want to make in this moment that are going to make me feel empowered, that are going to help me feel better, that are going to support my healing? Okay. And that's really where that power lies, that you're trying to kind of call into your dating and love experience. You're not reacting, you're doing all these steps before you make a choice and responding to the situation so that you can come at it from a grounded place. And maybe not 100% grounded, but a lot more grounded than you would have initially. So think about, what action do I want to take that would ultimately be for the greatest good for myself and for this relationship? So in this case, it might be giving it some time, seeing if they message you back. And if they don't by the end of the night, just maybe shooting them another message saying, hey, I hope everything's okay. Thinking about you. Hopefully we can talk tomorrow. And then you just have to play it out, right? Like, be here now, take one thing at a time as it comes up. Rather than texting them 5 million times and making yourself look crazy or feel crazy, or showing up at their office to see if they're really there when they say that they're there, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can always communicate with your partner or with this person afterwards about what's going on, and how, like, figure out if there's any way that, you guys can support each other, or any action that they can take that would be helpful for you. So you can say, when you see them next time, or when they reach out to you, you can say, hey, I totally get that you were like super busy, or I totally understand that, like, X, Y, and Z was happening and you just couldn't respond. But I will say it did feel kind of like shitty, and I did feel kind of like neglected, and I was a little worried about it. Just throwing it out there, like, would it be possible to, like, next time, because this is kind of what happens for me, like, shoot me a text telling me just very quickly, like, hey, like, I'm a little overwhelmed right now. I'll talk to you when I can. And like, people don't, like, they're not mind readers. They don't know how you feel unless you share how you feel. And you need to be able to communicate and share how you feel in a healthy relationship. If you're afraid that that person is going to take that and like dismiss you, or they're going to think, oh, that's too much work, or whatever, then they're not the right relationship for you. They're not a healthy, emotionally mature person. Emotionally mature people, people who are self-aware, people who are caring and compassionate and empathic, who are good partners, or good people to date in general, they will always respond from a place of love, and they will want to show up for you to make you feel comfortable and make you feel safe. If that person does not do that, fucking hit the high road. see you later, alligator. We're not dealing with that. That is not somebody we want to deal with. So you can see that there's both the element of we take our own responsibility for our triggers and we make sure that we are doing and taking the steps to work through them in a healthy way. And you can also communicate that and should communicate that with your partners to kind of see if there's anything that they can do to step in and make sure that you feel as safe as possible, because good partners want you to feel safe. They want you to feel loved. They want you to feel heard. They want to know when things are not okay. Okay. And that is 100% the truth. So I'll go over kind of the bullet points of what we just talked about again. So, what to do when you're feeling those emotionally intense moments? Witness the trigger, witness the sensations and the thoughts that are coming up, observe what's going on, pause before you take any action, invite in a lot of self-compassion, address the somatic part, the body, get it out of fight or flight, then address your thoughts, reframe them to be more supportive, reframe them based on reality. Ask yourself, what is going to be of the greatest good for me and for my relationship? What action can I take moving forward? And then communicate what's going on to your partner. Okay, and ask for what you need. Set a boundary if you need to, whatever that might be. So that's how to respond when you are triggered. Really, really, really important. If any of that was not clear, you guys, please let me know. Or if you have any questions, definitely let me know. And like I said, this carries through when you're triggered in any situation. You always want to respond from a conscious, empowered place. These are the steps to take to get there. Because we only have 20 minutes, I was going to kind of go through a little practice of doing this, but I'll save it for the end so we can make sure that we're getting the last kind of 3 points. And if we have time, we'll practice. But literally the practice is just to do the steps that I talked about. And I encourage you to do this for yourself in any given situation. Whenever you find yourself on a daily basis emotionally activated, try doing these steps. Try going through this process and see how you feel afterwards. Okay. So self-sabotage, right? When we have triggers, when we have wounds, when we have trauma, when we have grown up in unsafe, chaotic environments, or we've had really bad relationships, our unconscious mind is kind of crazy and it takes a lot of control over things. It leads us to self-sabotage in a way to protect us. And this sounds very counterintuitive and like it shouldn't make any sense. But the way that our brain works is, like I said, it's all about survival, all about avoiding pain, all about avoiding threats to our safety, well-being, and to our lives. And that includes our emotional well-being and our emotional safety. So it sees any threat as a threat, period. So when we experience pain and rejection and trauma and abandonment, abuse, and all of these things, that we normally do growing up in any given situation, because life is hard and relationships are difficult and we're bound to have bad experiences, our brain quickly holds on to those experiences for life and goes, okay, we're going to avoid this at all costs by making sure we do X, Y, and Z, right? So I'm going to give some examples here to make it kind of more concrete, but we will get in our own way of a good thing and we'll push a good thing away or we'll sabotage a good thing, because our brain is like, hey, we're not used to a good thing. This isn't safe. I don't know what to do with this. So before we get hurt, let's hurt them. Before we get abandoned, let's abandon them. If things are really good and really smooth, let's create some fucking chaos and drama, because that is what we know how to deal with. That's when we know we're loved. That's when we know things are safe. Okay. And so that's how our triggers and wounds will get in the way. Okay, so these are the examples that I wrote down to kind of think about how self-sabotage plays into it. We might push people away and cut them off so we can hurt them before they hurt us. Seen this happen many, many times. Somebody that we're dating does one thing that we don't like and we go, oh, there it is. There it is. They're not the person. Fuck them. I'm out of here. Bye. And you cut them off completely. And they're gone. Okay. I've seen this happen so many times. We push them away because they're boring or they're too nice, or like other people aren't going to like them. They're going to think they're kind of weird, or, they did this one thing that pissed me off, so they must be bad. I'm just black and white going to cut them off like that. That is a self sabotage thing. That is us getting in our own way, pushing them away with like from a place of protecting ourselves, right? Um, we might actually completely avoid conflict and or confrontation to try and, let's say, keep the peace and not rock the boat so we can hold on to a partner. But this allows them to engage in bad behavior, and kind of okays potential abuse as well. It doesn't actually solve anything. When there's something that bothers you and you shut up and shut down and you do not talk about it with your partner, and you do not open up the conversation and like allow for the space for that to exist, and for repair and connection to happen through this, and you avoid conflict completely, you're self-sabotaging because you're not setting your boundaries, you're not standing up for yourself, you're not protecting yourself, all for what? To hold on to somebody, to keep them happy, to keep things peaceful because we're afraid of conflict. That is self-sabotage, because eventually that is going to blow up in your face. Okay, because that wound that you have will fester and get worse and worse, and then all of a sudden you're going to explode at them over nothing, because that doesn't go away. It doesn't disappear just because you decide not to address it. So that's a form of self-sabotage, avoidance of conflict and confrontation. Another self-sabotage thing is really anxiously attaching to somebody and looking for them to constantly reassure us in ways that are just unhealthy. And being really clingy or suffocating, which will drive people away. We have, let's say, abandonment wounds, and we're so afraid of being abandoned that every second we need our partner to tell us that they love us and that they're here and that they're present, and we need them to reassure us that they're invested in our relationship. We always ask, "Are you mad? Are you mad?" Like, this is the one I hear the most, and this is something I used to do. "Oh, is everything okay? Are you mad at me? Do you still love me? Are you mad at me?" People get annoyed by that, you guys. Like, there is a reasonable like level of reassurance that we need, but it can get excessively unreasonable if you are anxiously attached. And if you need that constant like nurturing, or you need to be constantly suffocating your partner or clinging to them, and you can't give them any breathing room, that's going to push people away, because people need to have a sense of space. Sometimes they need to have that individuality, in order to feel like they're sane. So that's a way we self-sabotage. We like overly cling and attach to folks, and we make them feel really suffocated because we're so anxious that they're not loving us. Our abandonment wound is really, really strong there. Um, Also, with self-sabotage, we might unconsciously create some chaos and problems where there are none, because that's what we're used to in our lives. If you grew up with parents who were constantly fighting, if you grew up in a household that was full of fighting and kind of discord and chaos, you will know and notice that will follow you as a wound, as a programming thing throughout your life and other relationships. And when you're in a healthy relationship and there's no chaos and there are no problems, your unconscious mind is going to go, "Oh my God, this is new. I don't know what to do with this. This is not safe. This is potentially a threat, because we can't trust that this is going to last forever. So let's create some fucking chaos and let's create some problems so that we can feel comfortable, because that's a dynamic that we know and we are the most familiar with. We know how to navigate that." So let's say you have like a healthy partner, and you find yourself like wanting to start fights with them out of nowhere, like little things that are going on. You want to just like yell at them, right? Like, let's say they left a dish in the sink, and you're, and all of a sudden you're like, "Why are you so fucking lazy? Why are you so sloppy? Like, oh, I hate this." And you feel that trigger, that emotion is very, very real, right? I'm not saying the triggers that come up don't feel extremely real. They are real. But we're letting them drive the show. We're letting them make your reaction, decide how you respond. So you're creating chaos by picking fights. You're creating chaos by doing things that are going to actively make your relationship more volatile. And this is not your fault. This is just essentially your unhealed trauma coming into play in a healthy and safe relationship. So if you find yourself in a situation with someone who is very, healthy, safe, they don't yell, they don't create problems. They're not doing anything really wrong. And you find this like tickle, this like uncontrollable tickle, this urge, this, you want to do something, you want to fight, you want to create some chaos. That is a self sabotage practice. That is something that is going to get in the way of you being happy. Because if you are in a relationship with somebody who is healthy, they're not going to want to deal with that. They're not going to want to deal with a partner that they don't know at any given moment if they're going to bring chaos into their lives. Okay. So you will get in your own way, that relationship will end, and you will be on your own again. So, very important. Notice if you want to, you have this urge to create chaos and problems where there are none. Another way we self sabotage is that we might break their trust or act in ways that make them uncomfortable, right? Um, I've mentioned this example before, but texting like them a million times when they don't respond within an hour or two or something like that, that's going to make somebody feel uncomfortable. I once had a client who, I love her. She's amazing. And like we worked on so much trauma, and she had, it's just tremendous amount. And she's got through a lot of these triggers. But at one point, when I first started seeing her, she would tell me stories about like her ex and how like when she was dating him, and mind you, this was somebody she had dated for maybe 2 months, 8 weeks, right? That she actually would show up at his house when he would not text her back within like an hour to 3 hour window. She would drive and like 45 minutes to his house and beat his door down until he opened the door. Okay, like we don't want to do that, right? Like that's going to make somebody feel very uncomfortable. It's definitely violating some boundaries and personal privacy. And it's going to break their trust, snooping or searching through all the drawers of your partner, looking for problems, like looking for their cheating, looking for this or that. That is potentially self sabotage. Now, of course, I say this with a caveat, if you do notice patterns and things are happening and you have this kind of thought that maybe there's something not good going on and you're acting on that impulse, could be a trigger that you're acting on, could be also something you are picking up that is valid. So I don't want to negate the fact that sometimes, there is something not great going on, and that is your sixth sense picking up on something. But look, it's always about looking at what is the history, what are the facts that are right in front of you, and is there a reason that you should not trust this person? Is there a reason, or more than one reason, that they've shown you that they're not trustworthy, that justifies you then going through their things and snooping and all of that? If the answer is no, and they've never done anything to break your trust, then you might be like self-sabotaging here and responding from a trigger, and then they may find out and it may make them feel really uncomfortable, like they don't have any personal space or privacy, and they're not going to want to deal with that. Okay, so there are a million and one ways we self-sabotage, and we get in our own way when it comes to these relationships and having a healthy relationship. So being aware of our, again, wounds and our triggers and working through those is going to be so important, because it will help us get in the way, out of our own way, and will help us avoid the self-sabotaging. Okay. Now, talking about consciously navigating conflict, boundaries, and desires, this is again a step-by-step kind of process that you might want to take some notes on as well. When you're in a relationship, there's going to be conflict. In fact, if you are in a relationship and there is zero conflict or zero, it doesn't even have to be conflict, but if there's, everything is just like Disneyland, chances are it's bullshit and something is really off. You shouldn't be fighting all the time. You shouldn't be disagreeing all the time. In fact, like with a healthy partner, you're not, 99% of the time things are fine. But there should be a healthy amount of some kind of conflict, or at least a little bit of some things that you have to work through, because nobody's perfect and nobody's just like perfectly made for one another. It's just part of human nature. So we have to learn how to consciously navigate through conflict, how to set boundaries, honor boundaries, like have consequences when boundaries are violated, and also be able to talk about what our needs are, and ask for what we need and ask for what we want. So here are some things, especially I'll talk first about navigating conflict. So when you're having a conflict or there's a boundary issue with your partner or with a person you're dating, and I encourage you to have these conversations early on. Do not wait until you guys have been dating 6 months to start talking about the things that are bothering you, because that is just waiting way too long. Like, start in the beginning and you'll get to know really fast if your partner is emotionally mature and can have these conversations, which means that they're healthy or they're not. So if you have conflict or boundary issues, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to clearly identify the issue. Okay. Sit down, find a time to talk, say, hey, I just wanted to talk to you about some things that have been coming up. When's a good time? When do you think you'll be in the right headspace to have like kind of a more difficult conversation? Set a time and place, have that conversation then. Don't just like spur it on them in the moment, because sometimes people are just already overwhelmed with things. You want it to be a nice, set, safe space to have that conversation. So, in that conversation, when the time comes, you're going to identify the issue really quickly or really clearly, and kind of get at what is the core of this. So, let's say the issue for you is that, like really simple, let's say they are like coming over to your house and you guys are spending more time together and you're sleeping over, but they're like really messy and you're not messy. You're like very clean. You could say, hey, like, I love having you here and I love spending time together. And I really just like, I'm having such a great time. And, I've noticed that like recently I've just been feeling a little bothered that like when you come by, it's kind of like really messy. And I really like to have my place a little bit cleaner and more organized. And then the secondary thing to identify is not just the issue itself, but what is the deeper core issue? And in this example, the deeper core issue is not that thing that they're making your house messy, but that there's a level of feeling disrespected a little bit and feeling a little bit maybe unseen, because they don't see and acknowledge that you're a clean person and kind of like honor that, you know what I mean, by cleaning up after themselves. So you're going to identify the issue, the surface level issue, and then identify what's at the core. Do you feel hurt? Do you feel unloved? Do you feel unseen? Do you feeling ignored, neglected? Whatever that deeper core thing that's happening for you, also give it space to breathe, like let them know. Then you're going to identify how you feel, and the formula to kind of help you have these conversations without it becoming a fight or an argument is this: use I statements, talk about yourself only. Like, do not talk about, well, you feel this way and you think of, I think that you think that it's fine to do this. Like, don't talk for them. Don't tell them that you know what they're thinking. Don't talk about them in that way, like where they're operating from. Like, don't do that. Talk about you, how this makes you feel. Use I statements, okay? And the formula for this is like, when you do X, it makes me feel Y. Okay? When you do X, it kind of makes me feel Y. And I have a problem with this because, and I feel this way because, and I need, or whatever that might be. Talk about yourself. Okay. And something that your partner can do is mirror your statements so that they're hearing what you're saying. So they can say, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is, when I do this, you feel this. Is that right? And then you can either confirm it, say, yeah, that you got it, or maybe they're hearing something a little different because of their own programming. Maybe they go, oh, so you're saying I'm lazy. And you can say, no, not that. Those words did not leave my mouth, and that's not what I said. I'll repeat it again. Just when you take this action or do this thing, it makes me feel this way. Very concrete, very like factual. Okay. And then let them repeat it back to you until they understand what you're saying and they're not filtering it through their own filter. So you can clarify when necessary. That's kind of the next step. Then try to have a little discussion, have empathy, like make sure that they're validating your experience. You can validate their point of view, and have a little bit of an empathic, like feelings led discussion. And then identify your needs or boundary or something, like what, now what? It's kind of like, okay, now we've talked about the issue. Well, what has to change? What has to shift? What needs to be done to kind of, make things better? So talk about what you need. Hey, I would just need you to kind of like put the dishes away at night and maybe like not leave your clothes on the floor everywhere. Like, I have a hamper. You can like throw it in there. Like, no big deal. Be really, really specific about what you need, or set a boundary. Hey, I think we should just hang out at your place. If this is not something that you feel like you can do, I can come to your place. Let's just do that, because this is really something that I think is going to be bothering me. And if you can't, adjust to that, then let's do something different. So set a boundary. Not at my place. Let's hang out at your place. So set that boundary. Do something like that. Um, and then you can always end with some kind of loving statement, some kind of physical touch, maybe a hug, maybe a kiss, maybe holding hands, maybe rub on the shoulders, whatever it might be. Like, I appreciate you. Thank you for having this conversation. Like, I hear you. Like, we'll figure this out. But always coming from this place of like, we're on the same team and we're trying to navigate something together, not it's your fault and I'm right and you're wrong. Like, that approach to any conflict is never going to work. Okay. So then the last thing we're going to touch on here in the last few minutes is nurturing intimacy and connection. So these are just a couple of things that I want you to do when you're in a partnership, when you're with somebody and you're dating and you're growing the relationship, that'll help you nurture intimacy and connection. So the first thing is open communication. Open communication is sexy as fuck, and it creates a ton of trust. So always share your feelings, your needs, your thoughts. Don't hide your pain or what's icky and messy, because all of that needs to be out in the air. It's vulnerable, but be vulnerable with your partner, because that's going to help you feel safe in that relationship. And it's also going to show you if the person you're with is a safe person, if they are open to open communication. So open communication. Practice like noticing bids for connection. So bids for connection means, is your partner trying to connect with you over something, like whether it's talking to you about something or doing something with you or doing something for you, just engaging with you in any way. Notice these bids for connection and turn towards these bids. For example, we send each other TikToks all the time, right? Like, I'd send TikToks to everybody that I love. That's a bid for attention, right? Or a bid for connection, I should say. So you send a TikTok, let's say, to your partner, or like a social media post that's really, you think they think would be funny. And your partner gets that bid, and what do they do with it? They can either turn away or turn towards. If they turn away and they don't respond to it, or they don't watch it, or they don't talk about it, they don't say, hey, I saw that you sent that. That's so great. Like, blah, blah, blah. If they totally ignore it, that's turning away, and that causes like disconnection. But if they turn towards, it's like, oh, hey, oh, that's so funny, or they watch it, or they discuss it with you, or they just respond in some way, they're turning towards. So do a lot of the turning towards. That helps you build a lot of connection and intimacy in your relationship. The last like couple of things: play and have adventures. Often make time for dates and new experiences. This is not just like going to the movies or going out to dinner. This is like, go explore a new local town, go to like events that are happening in your area, like actually put in your schedule on the weekends or when you're free, time to go explore new things together. All of that is going to build experiences that you guys are going to have as a couple, and it's going to give you things to grow and do together and bond together over, and have these memories, playing and having adventures. Let your inner children out, like be really silly and playful and goofy and weird, and like let your like 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old self like come out, have pajama parties, like, like dance to weird music or watch funny movies, or, like play practical jokes on each other. I don't know, whatever your inner children like to do, engage them in your relationship as well. Learn each other's love languages. So we tend to love people the way that we want to be loved. But what we need to do is learn how that person receives love, learn their love languages, learn how they like to be loved, and love them that way. Because that is what's going to create really strong intimacy and connection. So learn how your partner likes to be loved and appreciated, and show up in that energy. And they should do the same for you. And the last two things: surprise each other with little gifts. Doesn't have to be expensive. Doesn't even have to be something you buy. Maybe it's like a little note that you write for them, like just telling them how you feel or something like cute, like whatever, but just surprise each other with little gifts. This is something that also will be helpful. And then the last thing is just make time for physical intimacy and explore your sexual desires together. Like, this is what makes a romantic relationship different than a friendship or different than a family relationship. Like, you get to explore your physical intimacy and sexuality together. So make time to do that. Like, open communication about what you need, what you want to explore. Don't be shy. Share your needs. Like, do cool, fun, new things, like whatever it might be. But like, definitely make time for that physical intimacy and connection. And you're going to keep those fires alive and well. Um, Okay, so that is kind of our last little chat for this masterclass series. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful. I will be sending out all 3 videos either tonight or Saturday morning for you guys, so you can rewatch it at any time. And super big thank you for joining me this week. And I'm so glad to have had you here. And don't forget to practice, working through your triggers and all of these things, because it's going to help you with everything in your life. And I really hope that all of this will catapult you into your next most amazing romantic relationship. All right. I am sending you all a big hug. Enjoy your weekend. You're so welcome. All right. I will talk to you guys soon. Enjoy your Friday.